So, good morning everybody. Hope you're all doing well. We are CW Bryan Architects and we're going to give you a brief snapshot of our journey towards BIM certification. To give you a brief introduction to the team, we got, as Claire has mentioned, we got William Power as Associate Director, myself, Calogero Marino, also known as Calogero Marino, former BIM manager, recently evolved into the role of project manager, and David Lamont is part of the A team, who unfortunately couldn't be here this morning due to other work commitments. CW Bryan Architects is part of the Coastal Fin and Wright Architects Group. It is an architects journal, top 100 architectural practices, with offices in Dublin, Cork, and across the UK, with different cities, including London, Manchester, Birmingham, and some others. Our projects span across 2 continents, Europe and Asia, as you can be seen there in our little map. And the project also span across multiple sectors, going from residential to student accommodation, office and commercial, and large master planning and community projects. Here we've got just a few examples of some of our most recent projects here in Dublin. On the top left-hand corner, you can see it's a student accommodation development. Recently got planning, and it is for approximately 800 student accommodation units. This project was very, very challenging, and it wouldn't have been such an easy project if we weren't using BIM. Other projects that are in the pipelines, an example of here on the bottom left-hand corner, again, build-to-rent schemes have become very, very popular in Dublin. Large number of apartments being delivered in large sites. And again, modular construction seems to have become the buzzword or the norm. It's becoming more and more. And with modular, we can see how BIM is helping in the process, in the coordination with all the different stakeholders involved in the project, making the delivery of the project from the inception to delivery on site much easier to deliver, and with a flow of information, a better flow of information. Some other examples there we got on the right hand side, one of our most recent projects completed here in Dublin in Molesworth Street. So we decided to embark on the BIM journey about 5 years ago, when the company had opened its Dublin office. That was about the same time I joined the company, and we realized straight away that, as well as having a desire to embark on the BIM journey, Dublin was the perfect office as a test bed for rolling out of new process and procedures and standards before actually rolling it out to all the other international offices. As being a small office was the perfect guinea pig to test new processes, come up with new idea, as well as that, as we've seen in the last couple of years, the industry has grown so fast, and that was another point that pushed us to have Dublin as a test bed, because with the growing staff, we were able to push that to all the staff and see what the response was in such fast manner before actually rolling it out to everybody. But we decided to kind of look at our route or our journey, and we first identified the need. We were able, with the in-house skills, to identify where the development was required, and subsequently to that, we realized that it was a great idea to actually have an accreditor, external accreditor, to come in and do a gap analysis for us, to kind of help us and realize where the gaps were, where there was opportunities and where limitations were. And we did that, and then we were able to actually look at the implementation of the recommendation. In order to do that, we had to set up, well, actually, before going so we did a few, apologies about this. So, okay, move on. The strategy, we went for these strategies, was one of the main point was to meet the requirements or the demand of BIM from different clients. But what we found out very soon was that client were requiring BIM, but there was lots of confusion on what BIM was and what they really wanted from BIM. So it was, for us, was a better situation to understand where we standed and what our understanding of BIM was, and now to sell that to the client in the situation where they were requiring BIM on the project. In order to do that, we deployed BIM managers and coordinators across all offices. We also set up a BIM committee for the firm, for the group, so for the cost of being and right, which we met monthly to see where we could improve and the progress where we were at. We were able to produce then standardized templates and documentation, and in doing so, we were very keen in getting all the teams involved and not to have just a selected bunch of people. So we would also organize CPDs, which we like to call BY or BIM, Bring Your Own BIM, where individual would propose a topic of conversation and would present that to the wider teams, and then create a conversation and discussion, which helped also in the production of standardized templates and documentation, as I said earlier, by involving everybody in the team and not just a selected number of people. These strategies also helped us avoiding having loads of unused information or repetitive information across all the different offices in the UK and Ireland. Oh. So as I said, BIM was requested by the client, but sometimes wasn't. Have I done? Was it not a bit crazy, this thing? Okay. So we've spoken about this. Some of the reasons, as I said earlier, was the BIM was requested by the client, but was sometimes misunderstood. So we were trying to guide, as a BIM being the lead designer in most of the project, we want to kind of steer the client in the right direction and not to overburden the stakeholders with requirements for BIM that at the end of the day are not going to be utilized. Also another reason was to standardize our own workflows and templates. At the same time as the Dublin office was set up, with the group had decided to actually update the quality management system, and that fell in place perfectly because we could develop the two at the same time. So implementation of BIM and the quality management system to work hand by hand and to work towards achieving BIM level 2 accreditation, but the real main reason was to create more efficiency within the workplace, the office. Some of the advantages that we spotted straight away once embarked on the BIM journey was processes were mapped out at the beginning, so there was no confusion during the rollout of the process and the strategy with everybody involved in the projects. There was a standardization of all the process and procedures. There was an easier information tracking across all the offices, something that would have been a lot harder with an analog system. And documentation and latest version available only, that was one of the things that was really important for us, as I would say for most of the people involved in the AEC industry. BIM allowed us to have access to the latest information, even though we were in Dublin and the project was done in London and we weren't involved in it on a day-by-day basis. Production of consistency of information was consistent, and also the other two advantages there, these are more based towards how achieving BIM level 2 accreditation would help us. It would help us in showing and understanding and experience, and it would help us in the pre-qualification questionnaires, which we would avoid to have to respond to every time. So I'll pass the ball on to William now.
Thank you, Calo. Sorry, excuse me. Okay, I'm going to talk through a bit of the process, where we are, some of the issues, the lows, the highs, and just kind of try to bring it home. So in terms of the process, so I suppose the first step was to review the documentation that was produced after the gap analysis, and that led to the production of a little bit more documentation as well. I suppose the whole system seems to love its documents, but a lot of them are very important in terms of making sure people know what they're doing and when they're supposed to do it. I suppose the next step in it was to actually figure out where we were going to resource it from. Like a lot of offices, it's an issue of the time. Resources are tight, they're scarce. It's kind of hard to get good people at the moment. So it's constantly, I suppose, things like the, certification and stuff like that constantly get hit with work that's kind of fee generating or whatever needs to keep the lights on. So it's kind of important to try and fight back against that, I suppose, and try hold on to the resource and get it done. So we've kind of, I'll speak a bit more about where we are now, but we've kind of restructured a bit recently to try and drive this on. So then review documentation against standards. So obviously the recent introduction of the ISO standards has kind of forced a step back a little bit to kind of just understand where the tweaks and changes are in that and to adjust what we have. And then organisation of the documentation and kind of making it available to the people within the office easily. So I suppose one of the things we've done more recently is we've gone out and purchased a document management system, kind of a project management system for the entire office. And the idea of that was to try and get everything back into a single source. So it manages all our documentation, emails, all of that sort of stuff, and brings in stuff like time and project finances so that we can actually, we can start to look at projects as a whole, kind of more of a holistic view of it, I suppose, rather than typically being in separate areas like the finance being huddled off in a corner that you never find out that you're in danger, I suppose, until the worst has happened. And then lastly is part of the process is obviously to train staff. So like once we've actually figured out what we're doing and how we intend to do it, is getting stuck in and actually getting people in a room and training and upskilling and whatever needs to happen. So I suppose in terms of difficulties, I think they're probably going to be common amongst most in the room. But I suppose one of the biggest ones we found is countering the way things have been done. One of the big benefits we have in Dublin is that it's a young office, so it's 5 years there, so it's gone from, I suppose, 2 people 5 years ago to 50 now, so we're growing very quickly. And I suppose what it has led to is, I suppose, for want of a better word, a young and dynamic office. So we've a lot of students coming in who tend to be technology savvy. So it's made our life a little bit easier that we're not having to retrain. We still have a couple of stalwarts that. I kind of hoping that it wouldn't be the difficult one, but we have the few that are always difficult to change and to motivate, I suppose, into the right direction. But that's starting to change now as well as we start to produce relevant information coming back from this. Obviously, resistance to change, kind of the same topic. Fear of the unknown is one of the big ones. I think it's what drives people to kind of stay where they are. They're happy to keep going at what they were doing in the way they were doing it because they don't know. I suppose the unknown is if I change, is the task that did take me a day going to take me a week. And in a time where resources are tight, I suppose it's an important one because deadlines are deadlines, they won't change and they just seem to be getting tighter. And then obviously new technology, so I suppose training people in all of this new technology because it seems to be changing every day there's a new app for something. So it's just figuring out whether they are beneficial and then rolling them out across the office. So I suppose in terms of progress, just to go back to the initial process slide and where we are. So like obviously it was easy enough to identify the need for certification and progressing and actually standardizing all of what we have. I suppose the in-house development then happened, and the guys set up the groups, and there was regular meetings, and that kind of all progressed very well. So went through a process of obviously resources there again, but getting documents together, reviewing them, revising them, and getting them to a place where everyone was kind of happy to go forward with them. Then there was a process of gap analysis that was done through Lloyds in the UK. So that produced recommendations, obviously, and we kind of came back to, again, more revisions and updates and revisions. And for us, that's kind of, I suppose we should have moved into implementation and recommendations then, but everyone got busy, including in the UK, so, and across. So what has happened is we kind of have come back, because that was about a year ago. Was kind of a decision was made. Okay, the ISO standards are coming, so we're all busy. We're not getting time to put into it. So it was kind of we'll wait and see what happens with that, and then we'll come back and hit it all in the one go, rather than trying to do it at the end of last year and then to update it again now. So what we're looking at doing now is kind of coming back and trying to quickly come through that, just update our documents, get back into hopefully a gap analysis, see where we have gaps, and back into implementation, and then out the far side of an audit, and hopefully sign off eventually in certification. So I suppose just to comment on a few of the lows, one of the biggest lows is the time it's taken, I suppose. I don't know if it's up there, but yeah, time pressure. And I suppose it kind of always leads back to, I suppose what Mark said it earlier, we sell time as a consultant. So our resource is the hours that everyone has during the day. So like obviously fee generating work tends to take precedence at times. So we're trying to counter that now, and hopefully we're trying to get on top of it. I suppose the one of the lows, it's not a low, everything evolves and moves on, but there has been a fairly rapid amount of changes in the standards, like from the BS, the 1192 into the ISO standards. So every time you think you have it pinned down, something seems to change or tweak, or something new comes along. So it's just trying to keep up with all of that, and is tough. The highest then, I suppose, we are seeing an increase in efficiency. So we're seeing better data, or management of data. I suppose like everything is data to us. We're fully digital, like so emails. One of the biggest ones to overcome, I think it's in a lot of places, was emails and filing of emails and stuff like that. So we're starting to get through on that. And then obviously it's led to an improved quality management system there. So we're actually producing, I suppose, for want of a better work, more efficiently. I suppose, speaking from a personal note, one of the biggest highs for me is I live in Wexford, I work in Dublin. I look out at scenery similar to this, so I don't want to leave it. And this move to data, like I suppose in the industry we're in, we don't move 20 kilobyte emails. It tends to be hundreds of megabytes or gigabytes of files. So for me, it's highly important to actually get to a situation where we can move them very quickly. I suppose I keep hearing rural broadband and stuff like that, but part of that is making sure it's where it is. So like as long as I know that stuff is going to be stored where it's meant to be stored in the format that's there, I can quickly access it. The struggle you have is pulling it down and then realizing that actually that's not the most current one, it's actually up there, and you've waited 10 minutes for it to download where I am. So it's a constant battle. Then lessons. I suppose what we've learned is the earlier the training, the better. Don't let bad habits develop, I suppose, is the thing. Just get in there as soon as possible. And to that end, like more we try to do more CPDs and just even just sitting down and talking about workflows, like how you get from the start of the project when you bring the technology into it, and what you do with it to get the most, I suppose, efficient use of time. I suppose setting aside time to do it is important. So we're starting to do that. Like, so we're actually we've more recently started to plan our resources, I suppose, which is a big thing for us. So we've started by actually allocating specific time that's blocked out for people that can't be gone near, hopefully, and improve communication. Obviously, we're trying to roll it out across a group of offices, so it's important that we're all talking to each other. I suppose for people that are looking for a bit of advice, I suppose just a few nuggets. Don't be afraid of the process. It will help. Getting to a standardised way of doing stuff is important. Be open to suggestions. Some other people are right. You're not always right all of the time. Be open to other people's suggestions. Be open to software suggestions as well. It's a big one because you tend to find a piece of software and get locked into it, and it's no different to the old habits. Software's change quickly, and what was efficient yesterday mightn't be efficient today. So it's just to not discount something because you found something that you're comfortable with. Involve the team, so bring everyone in. Try do it as a whole. I think the 3 or 4 guys isolated in the back of the room in a huddle constantly for 6 weeks and coming out with 5,000 pages of documents doesn't really work. I think it's good to bring people on the journey with you and to try do it in little bits and pieces. I suppose one of the things we learned going through the gap analysis is to sit down and talk to the people you're there. They have an expertise, so just to listen to them, and don't be afraid to ask for expertise where you don't know what you're doing. There's people out there to do everything at this stage. So if you're unsure about something, just talk to people. That's it from us. Hopefully.